Hey, you're listening to episode 212. Today we're chatting about the stressors that contribute to fertility issues, how toxins can affect your fertility, food sensitivities, and your fertility experiences, and so much more. And if you haven't guessed already, we're chatting about fertility. Lots of juicy things going into today's episode. Our guest today is Sarah Clark from Fab Fertile. She struggled with infertility issues like many of us, had both of her children with donor eggs, and years later discovered that the root cause of her infertility was a food intolerance and later a gut infection. By using a functional health coaching approach that uncovers potential healing opportunities, she works with women to get them pregnant and have their babies, which is never a bad thing if you want all the babies. If you have questions about today's content, you can go to healthfulpursuit.com/contact and just ask me. You can catch up on previous podcast episodes, including checking out all the links for today's episode by going to ketodietpodcast.com. Once you get to that page, look for episode 212. I've included links for silicone menstrual cups, the Skin Deep database, the fertility group study, natural podcasts that we chatted about, the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, and a bunch of other things. Oh, yikes. Before Sarah gets the show and tells you all the steps to heal your body through your experience of fertility issues, head on over to healthfulpursuit.com/shop. Today is the last day to get 40% off all of my love-inspiring programs, including my whole keto program. You can use the code CYBERLOVE. That's CYBERLOVE at healthfulpursuit.com/shop. Get 40% off all of my workshops, including my whole keto 21-day program. 40% off, guys. This is crazy. If you're unsure of the links, go to ketodietpodcast.com. It'll be all there under episode 212. Okay, let's do this thing. Hey, I'm Leanne Vogel, and you're listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. I've put together a free 21-page guide on achieving weight loss on your keto diet if nothing is working. Grab your free guide at ketoforwomen.com to get the steps you need to overcome the hurdles standing in your way. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, and thanks Leanne for having me on the podcast. Excited to be here. And so I'm Sarah Clark, and I'll just share about my journey a little bit. So how I came to the work of being a fertility coach, infertility conqueror is, so I had my own journey with infertility. And I always joked in my early 20s that I was having menopausal hot flashes. I remember being in HR at the time, I'd be fanning my face and kind of joking, oh, menopausal hot flash, hee hee hee. Well, turns out that's what it was. So for me, the time I had irregular periods, and by irregular periods, I was getting the period a couple times a year. I had acne all of a sudden. In my teens, I had great skin. And then in my early 20s, I started getting acne on my chin. And then I had this weird fungal rash on my chest. And then I had yeast infections. So the first recommendation when you've got acne and irregular periods is to go on the pill. So I was given the pill, which is not the best recommendation, a Band-Aid solution. Went on the pill, and I had this life plan of getting married at 25 and having my kids at 28. So went ahead and got married at 25. And then at the age of 28, decided I wanted to start preparing for children. So went off the pill. The acne never really improved when I was on the pill. Obviously the periods did, but there was a fake bleed. But I went off, and my cycles were still irregular. So they're still coming, a couple times a year. So went off there, went to see my OBGYN, and I was told that I had premature ovarian failure, which is the loss of function of the ovaries before the age of 40. And the only way that I'd ever have children is by using donor eggs. So I remember her reaching up on her shelf, giving me the IVF brochure, and I was in complete shock. I'm like, I don't know what the heck just even happened here. How could this happen at 28? But because I'm a person of action, I took the brochure. Again, I was still in shock, and I didn't take any time to connect any of those symptoms. But off I went, talked to my husband, and off we went to the fertility clinic. And so basically back then, they were, for donor eggs, the profile was coming in the mailbox. This is almost 18 years ago. When I said donor egg to people, and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So we went on a list for a donor. and the profile came in the mailbox. So we waited for the profile. They didn't have pictures at that time. Now, when you look for donors, there's pictures typically of them as a donor as a child. They also can have them as an adult. But for us, it was just in the mailbox. It had the maternal and the paternal history, medical history, and some physical characteristics as well. And so we selected a donor that we felt right. I'm like super tall, 6 foot. So for me, height was a big thing. So I found someone somewhat tall, obviously not 6 foot, but, and then, so for us, we got that. And this was, back when, so we were doing it. Actually, the donor, she had male factor infertility, and in return for us paying for her medication and her treatment, she would then donate half her eggs to me. This service is no longer available. They stopped doing this in 2004 in Canada. But so anyways, we had eggs from her, and we were lucky enough on the first fresh transfer to have our daughter, Ava, and Ava is almost 18. So this is, as I say, years and years ago, when, now because of all the IVFs that are happening, we've got egg donation and embryo adoption and embryo donation. I had someone on my podcast, and she just had a little baby, and it's from an embryo that's been sitting there for 13 years. And so the natural siblings for her little baby, she's just turned 2, the natural siblings are 13 years old. So science is amazing, and what it can do is crazy. So, we were lucky enough on the first fresh transfer to have our daughter. And then I had 2 embryos left over, wanting to have our kids close together. So went back in again, and unfortunately, I was stressed. I was in this mission to have them close together, and that didn't work. So then went on a separate list for a separate donor egg. And then we were lucky enough on the first fresh transfer of that donor to have our son, and Will's 15. So again, many, many years ago. And then just fast forward. So the first year after I had my daughter, I had 9 colds. Every cold went into a sinus infection. I thought it was a great idea to take antibiotics for every cold. Not a great idea. I just completely destroyed all my gut flora. And then I also had chronic bladder infections, was taking every kind of antibiotic, became allergic to all the antibiotics. At one point I thought I had fleas, but it was the highs from the antibiotics. So I had chronic sinusitis, chronic bladder infections, and I also had yeast infections. Them became chronic. I had dandruff, I had vertigo, I had toenail infections. Basically my immune system was low, but I was still doing my thing, still in corporate HR. And then I decided at that point to really bring life coaching into the corporate environment. So I took a life coaching course. And then that's when I had my own personal wake-up call, decided I really wanted to go into health and wellness, took a health coaching course. And that's when I discovered I had these food sensitivities. So for me at the time, I took out dairy and gluten, took those out of my system. And then I found that the sinusitis started to improve, the bladder infections started to improve, the yeast infections. Later, I took out corn. Then a few years later after that, I then did a stool test, got tested for, found that there was some gut infections going on, so H. pylori and streptococcus and fungal infections, so dealt with those. And really, so my message is if you're still cycling naturally, there's things we can do using a functional approach, using functional medicine, functional nutrition, using a functional approach to dig into, well, why does it happen in the first place? And for me, I didn't discover any of this until I was 40. I was fully in menopause. It was too late for me, but for you, there's things we can do.
Today's episode continues after this short message from one of my sponsors who make the show possible, plus give you some great deals on my favorite things. Get a healthy dose of fat with F-Bomb nut butter packets filled with high-quality fats. Each single-serve packet is keto-friendly, no sugar, non-GMO, gluten-free, dairy-free, peanut-free, and vegan. And they won't blow up in your purse like the other packets that we've all tried. Just pure fats in an easy tear packet. Listeners of the podcast get this exclusive epic deal that you won't want to miss. Buy any 2 10-packs of F-Bomb nut butter packets and get a free 10-pack of F-Bomb premium oil of your choice. Go to healthfulpursuit.com/F-Bomb and use the code LeanneFree, that's That's LEANNEFREE, all in caps, no spaces, to choose 2 nut butters, then get a free 10-pack of oil. Choose from MCT, olive, avocado, coconut, or macadamia nut oil. You'll love the convenience of taking healthful oils with you on the go. No more inflammatory oils on your takeout salads or warm meals. Just rip into one of the oil packets and away you go. Again, that's healthfulpursuit.com/FBOMB and use the code LeanneFree.
So I just kind of wanted to dig into our approach and how we really work with couples that are struggling with infertility. And so first so I'll just talk about some of the stressors on the body. So first of all, stressor will be a food sensitivity, and I'll go into that a little bit. Food sensitivity, a gut infection. So I had both of those. Environmental toxins. When I look back, actually, I lived in this house, a cedar house in the woods. It was always there was always an ant infestation. So it was constantly being sprayed. So my dog passed away at 10 of cancer. I have infertility. My brother has blood cancer. Was the fact that we, inhaled all those toxins when we were young, like over and over again, spraying in the house. I don't know. I also have the MTHFR genes. Maybe my ability to methylate toxins is impaired. So those environmental toxins are huge. So that's another stressor. So looking at your personal care, your cleaning chemicals, the air you're breathing, your plastics, your water. So the environmental toxins are a stressor. And then also looking at the mental emotional side of things. Most people in the infertility space or that are on the fertility journey, I think, understand the fact of the mental emotional side of it as being a stressor. And sometimes it's being honest about, there's a lot of triggers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, but a lot of triggers going on when you are on the fertility journey. So getting really honest about that. I didn't have anyone to talk to really about this. No one really understood what I was going through back with when I experienced infertility and had donor eggs. So now things have changed and there's more support. I was just on these random little forums trying to figure out, what is POF and what the heck's going on. And then the last one is structural stress. If you got something out of alignment or pinched nerves, so that could be causing stress in the body. So those are the stressors: the gut infection, the food sensitivity, the environmental toxins, the mental, emotional, and the structural. So we start with the diet piece. And a lot of people that come to me, everyone gets kind of myopically focused on the infertility diagnosis, and whether it be diminished ovarian reserve, low AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone, high FSH, or unexplained infertility, fibroids, PCOS, whatever it may be. They're hyper-focused on the diagnosis and haven't really looked at the whole body. So everyone that comes to me I'd say the majority of tell me they do not have a food sensitivity. And when we dig into this, I'd say the majority of them do. So we start out by doing a elimination diet. And so that's taking out the top allergens, which are dairy, gluten, soy, corn, peanuts, and eggs. Have them take those out for 10 days. And we have actually both partners do this. So beginning, I was just coaching women and really having both partners doing this. Even though we're dealing with female factor infertility, it's really important to have the partner. Every time we would, if the partner was missed, it was, even though he's saying his sperm is fine, everything's great, there's always things we can do to optimize his preconception health. And we do a blood chemistry review, not to diagnose, but to educate, but really to dig in further, what has been missed. And sometimes we were finding infections, even gut infections like H. pylori, being passed back and forth. So we have both partners do the elimination diet. You can do anything for 10 days. So taking out those top allergens and then systematically reintroducing them and seeing exactly how they impact your body. So we've had people bring back in corn. It can flare up their asthma. Bring back in dairy, it can make you feel phlegmy. Bring back in gluten, it could mess with your digestion. So it's different for everyone. We had people, it's just different. So it's really important. I think really anyone and everyone should do an elimination diet to see how food impacts their body, because sometimes you just never really connect the dots. So that's the diet piece of it. And then we also do so we dig into this further with functional testing. So we'll tweak it with, we use a LEAP MRT test. So that looks at 200 foods plus foods and chemicals. So foods in the yellow we'd keep out for 60 days. Foods in the red we keep out for 90 days. So just tweaking that further. And there's no real perfect food sensitivity test. A lot of times people with infertility, it doesn't really matter how old they are. They're past the point when they want to have their baby. So to be able to figure this out quickly, the food sensitivity test allows us to tweak it. If you've been on hormonal birth control, which a lot of people that I speak to have been, so they've been And typically when I asked them why they were on it, they were put on it because they had irregular cycles, they had heavy cycles, they had really bad PMS, cramps, whatever it may be. There's a reason, a medical reason as to why they were put on the pill, acne, and then maybe they were given Accutane, things like that. And so that can then predispose you to these food sensitivities and gut infections impacting your gut health. And sometimes when you get the food sensitivity test back, you might have a whole bunch of foods on there that are going to light up and say that you're intolerant to it, especially if it's all your favorite foods. It can be an indicator of a leaky gut. So digging into that further, and just because you're intolerant to it now doesn't mean you can't bring it back in later. If it's a really high red food, we recommend keeping it out for a longer period of time. So we do the elimination diet, and then we tweak it with the food sensitivity test, either the LEAP MRT. There's some wheat Zoomer and dairy Zoomer that we can do with an IgG as well. So those are some different options, depending on where you are in the world. The LEAP MRT typically is just available in the US right now. Other parts, we're looking at the IgG option. So, and these tests are all shipped worldwide. That's how we do it. So that's the food sensitivity part of this. Again, most people come to us, wouldn't even think there's a food sensitivity. Obviously with keto, I think people here know the power of food and really how that can really impact you. I think with the keto part of it is just looking into the dairy piece. And if you're saying I can't give up the dairy, that's something to potentially dig into. So that's it's a top allergen, especially if there is an intolerance with gluten. A lot of times we're seeing it's the casein and then the dairy, so the protein and milk there that's giving people an issue. So to dig into that by doing the elimination diet. And then so that, with the keto part of it is to look at the dairy side of things, just kind of dig into a few more of the food things around here from a keto side of things, where I think people may go wrong. I guess it's the calorie restriction. So going too low calories for too long, this is not recommended. If you're trying to conceive, you can still stay keto, but a couple of days a week add additional carbs, so your blood sugar is not impacted. Obviously processed foods, or like lazy keto as they call it, like bars can be a good entry level thing, but making sure you're not doing a whole bunch of processed foods, that's not recommended. Kind of back to that Michael Palin saying that if your great grandmother says, what is that? Don't eat it. Eat the periphery of the grocery store. Also the poor quality fats like canola oil or hydrogenated oils. You don't want to do that. You want to do the animal fats, the beef tallow, lard, coconut oil, avocado oil. So making sure you're having really good quality fats. Fats are super crucial for hormones, and really how a lot of times we'll see people doing a too low fat diet. So looking at fats. And then the other thing with keto is the sugar alternatives. So it could be a good transition to use like the Swerve sweetener, but the sugar, alcohol it's not really healthy for the body. So that erythritol, but in the beginning it might be good. And then as you start to transition out, and then having more of the natural sweeteners. So I think people potentially could, with the keto side of things, be caught up in too many sugar alternatives. So that's kind of what we're seeing. And then also the intermittent fasting wouldn't be recommended, because when we talk about stressors, that can be a stressor on the body. So definitely with the keto, digging into the dairy piece is key. And we see a lot of people, especially if there's estrogen dominance, to dig into the dairy and intolerance, and really do the elimination diet, take it out, and do a food sensitivity test to tweak it further. So that's where we go on the diet piece. It's foundational to all of this. And I see a lot of people, they've done a lot of work with other practitioners, a lot of work, but the diet piece really has not been honed in. And we also see a lot of people that are have a high gluten sensitivity. Either they're coming in, they have undiagnosed celiac disease, a lot of false positives from the conventional celiac test. So it tests for over 75 proteins in wheat, and it's only testing for one. And then the wheat Zoomer can dig in further. It looks at 26 proteins in wheat. So it can still dig in further, but a lot of the times we will look at the stool test, the GI map test, and the anti-gliadin. And if that's high, then we're going to actually recommend a gluten-free home, because even if your partner is going out having a beer or having some bread and comes back and kisses you and it's on your lips, and you're highly intolerant to gluten, that can cause a reaction, and it could last for days, weeks, months. So we do see this quite regularly with people with the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and this is what I have. So don't have celiac, but I have that, and for me, the gluten just does not make me feel good. So again, a stressor on the body, food sensitivity. So to really dig into that piece is crucial. And if all this is just too much, I would say for both couples at a minimum to go dairy and gluten-free and all organic for 90 days. And if you're not pregnant, then dig into all the testing. So that's where I'd go on the recommendations for the food. So that's the food piece. And then as far as the functional testing, we also do a Dutch test, looks at your hormones using urine. So your sex hormones, your melatonin, your cortisol. We see lots of issues with people. A lot of people actually with like flat levels of cortisol that like in a kind of a burnout mode, especially if they've been doing multiple IUIs or IVFs and failed cycles and a lot of stress with, on this journey. Infertility can impact all aspects of your life. So we see that quite regularly. And also we see sometimes that people have a diagnosis like premature ovarian failure or low AMH or diminished ovarian reserve, and then their hormones come back and actually their estrogen is fine. It's not the case for everyone, but the Dutch test will really give us a good clue as to what's going on with your hormones and which pathways they're going down. So it's looking at your hormones using urine. So we use that. And then the last test the third test we use is the GI map test, which I talked about. I'd say the majority of people that come to us, no one thinks that they have a gut infection. I'm going to tell you the majority of people that we work with, they all do have a gut infection. So and this was the case for me. And as I healed my gut, even though I was doing that nice healthy diet, taking out those inflammatory foods, there was still some other lingering issues for me that weren't clearing up. And when I started working on the gut health, and never some perfect healthy me, but it's a continual process, but really the gut health was key. So we see people with multiple parasites, multiple bacterial infections, fungal infections, H. pylori being spread back and forth to a couple. So we see this on a regular basis. So then we will develop a customized program. So part of my team, I work with a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. She's the one that's going to run these tests and then develop a customized protocol. So it's basically taking a low and slow approach using targeted supplements based on these tests, and then allowing the body to heal, reducing inflammation. And so again, back to those stressors, you have the food sensitivities, a stressor, the gut infection. And then the last test we do is the hair tissue mineral analysis test. Looks at your mineral status. Minerals are the spark plugs of the body. Sometimes you can eat these beautiful healthy foods, but maybe your body's not absorbing them. So we would then, it could be tweaked with some additional supplements potentially, or even just with diet. So those are the tests: the food sensitivity, the hormone, that is the Dutch test, the GI map test, which is a stool test, and then the hair tissue mineral analysis test. And that's the testing we do. And then we develop that customized protocol looking at your environmental toxins. So that's another piece of this, especially for women, looking at your feminine hygiene. So switching out those conventional tampons and pads and moving over to either a Diva cup or an organic pad or tampon. A lot of these conventional ones are sprayed with glyphosate, which is a herbicide linked to infertility and whole sorts of other diseases, and you're putting it in your most intimate area, your vagina. So looking at switching those over, we have people do that right away. And then going to the Skin Deep database and the ewg.org. You can go to the Skin Deep database, and then you can actually look at your current products and see what the rating is. You want the rating between 1 to 3 is the best, and see what your rating is and see how toxic it is. It's not about throwing everything out, because I find a lot of people can get stuck in the weeds here and get really get obsessed with the products and throwing things out and spending a lot of money. It's not about that. It's when each product finishes, then you buy an alternative that is lower on the Skin Deep database, and just checking that first, because even it could be greenwashing. So it could be saying it's organic and natural, and those are just buzz, marketing words. So you can dig into that further. So really looking at your personal care, making the switch, looking at your feminine hygiene, looking at your cleaning products again as each one finishes. Switch to a natural alternative. Looking at the ewg.org, you can check your cleaning products there. Looking at your water, so our water can be filled with chlorine, fluoride, birth control pill residue. So looking at a water filter at a minimum, looking at a Brita. It's not the best. It doesn't take out everything, but it's better than tap water, which I used to drink for years. So looking at a Brita, I like the Berkey. That's my favorite one. And the water just tastes heavenly, and it's just beautiful. Anyways, it takes out all those top contaminants. And then another one that we talk about too is having a filter on your shower, because you can be in the shower having this nice warm shower, but then all the vapors from the toxins that are in the water, you're inhaling all of those. So getting a water filter on your shower, a shower filter, and Berkey has a good one, or you could just check one on Amazon, but making sure that it's going to filter out those top contaminants. That's a good one to look at. And then also your plastics, making sure for fertility, it's important to have enough water. We see this regularly, that people are going to the bathroom only peeing like once a day. That was me. You want to be having, your 8 glasses of water. I think we all know that, but to really make a concerted effort for this, because it's really important to stay hydrated. It's important for your cervical mucus, which is how the sperm will get to the egg. So selecting a filtered water, and then drinking it out of a glass or stainless steel bottle, getting rid of the plastics, and making the switch over again, not all at once, because that's stressful. But as things move on, you can start moving to glass containers. So that's the environmental toxin side of things.
Today's episode continues after this short message from one of my sponsors who make the show possible, plus give you some great deals on my favorite things. ButcherBox features 100% grass-fed and finished heritage-bred pork and organic free-range chicken. ButcherBox sends you high-quality, health-promoting meats directly to your door on dry ice, and free shipping anywhere in the lower 48. ButcherBox makes committing to quality protein sources less expensive and more available to everyone. Their prices are hard to beat, and it's challenging to find a higher quality product anywhere in the USA. I've been using ButcherBox for years and love the convenience of a package showing up just when I need it, and their ground sausage is an absolute dream. ButcherBox has put together a super special deal for all listeners of the show. Order your first box and get a special gift plus an additional $20 off. Now, this special gift is so epic that I can't even mention it on the episode today. So you'll have to go to butcherbox.com/keto diet to check out the deal, plus get your $20 off your very first order. Again, that's butcherbox.com/keto diet to check out the deal, plus get $20 off your first order. If you're unsure of the link, simply check out today's show notes for all the details.
Then another stressor we have is the mental emotional side of this. So this is really key when dealing with infertility on the fertility journey. It's the fertility diet and infertility diagnosis is likened to a cancer diagnosis. It impacts all aspects of your life, impacts your relationships, your how you socialize, your work, your finances, because this stuff is expensive. So it's really important to get support with that. And just a step here, actually, and I think right now, like myself, when I got that diagnosis, didn't get a second opinion, didn't dig deeper to see about all those different health issues I had as to why it was going on. And I went straight to the fertility clinic. Now, I'm one of the fortunate ones that it worked, but I see people that they've gone through multiple failed IUIs, multiple failed IVFs. They've spent tens of thousands of dollars, and it takes an average cycle for an IVF an average successful cycle will take 3 cycles for success at a cost of $60,000. So to me, the fertility side of industry, it's big business, and obviously they're helping a lot of people, but why is that the first step? So to me, in the functional approach, you've got that healing roundtable, which is popularized by Dr. Oz, where you're in the center, but you have your RE, your OBGYN, your fertility coach, your functional nutritionist, your masseuse, your chiro, your acupuncturist, not all at once, these people, but they're all there, and you assemble your team. And a lot of times we just go straight to the RE, and really the RE is part of your team, but they may not know about the functional side of things, so they're missing stuff. So the first step, the last step is IVF. Let's figure out, well, why is it not working? And then really focusing on your preconception health, because if you've got something going on, this is going to impact the health of your children. Both my kids have food sensitivities because I didn't figure any of this stuff out. My postpartum health was not good. I've since read about postpartum rage. I wasn't like completely raging, but I definitely was cranky, irritable, and not happy, and I just thought that was my personality, but it turns out, no, that's not it. There was other stressors going on in my body, and that's was causing me to have my postpartum period. Was not fun. So looking at all these things beforehand, our program is 6 months, but really it's like looking at a minimum of, it takes 90 days for the egg to renew itself. The life cycle of the sperm is 70 to 80 days. So taking a minimum of 3 months. And I interviewed Dr. Ben Lynch on the podcast, and he talked about, well, why do we plan like our wedding, like 12 to 18 months, we are planning our wedding. And then on the first month, we want to get pregnant. So why don't we, swap that around and plan for our baby at least 12 to 18 months and really get both, ourselves and our partner in like awesome health. This is affecting our children, our children's children. We're in the middle of a huge food experiment with glyphosate and, herbicides being sprayed in our food and all sorts of other things, impacting us. And it's just to look at things differently. And the fertility clinic will be there for you. But to me, it's a last step. It's very costly. Obviously, a functional approach is an investment, but it's looking at that as the last step. And so just back to the mental, emotional side of things. So really, there's a lot of triggers for people that are trying to get pregnant, be it looking at pregnant bellies, looking at can cause stress, getting friends that are getting pregnant, those baby announcements, and really getting honest with your close circle if you're able to tell a few people. And some people haven't even told anyone they're struggling with it because there's still some shame and stigma around this. And so being able to explain to people how you want them to handle if there is an announcement or a baby shower or something like that, how you want them to handle it. And sometimes people will not tell you, and that makes you feel worse, or they will tell you and you're blindsided. So to say, you know what, I want you to leave a message or send me an email, or I want you to come in personally and tell me, or right now I'm so happy for you, but I can't attend the baby shower because it's too much for me. So like these things are real, and getting honest about those triggers and those negative thought patterns is key. Alice Domar, she's a pioneer of mind-body fertility. She's a Harvard researcher and run mind-body fertility groups for years, and really found that women. So this is a group that she'll run, and going through the principles of mind-body. So meditation, mindfulness, fertility, yoga, looking at negative thought patterns. These are all key. And then 6 months, 55% of women became pregnant by participating in one of these mind-body fertility groups. And then 2 years, 95% became a mother somehow. So this is rooted in science, the mindfulness approach. So really digging into this and getting honest about honest about what you're going through, being able to set some boundaries around this. Reaching out for support is key, and telling a few people of how you want them to handle specific announcements or whatever it may be, how you want things to be handled on your terms. And that can be very empowering. Also looking at fertility yoga, that can be really good if, meditating is not for you, or sitting still, you're like, oh, I can't do that. And also many people, when they're dealing with infertility, they may feel like their body is broken, or they may feel like a failure because, cycle after cycle, it's not working. And really the fertility yoga can help to feel empowered that your body is powerful. And also it helps to oxygenate the reproductive organs. So there's some good poses for that. So legs up the wall, which is a good one. But the stress piece of this cannot be minimized, and really to become aware of your triggers, what's happening in your body, and really getting some support on this. And some people will feel especially if they had a diagnosis, like a traumatic one, like the one I had. And looking back, I didn't take any time to grieve or deal with this. But how I deal with things, though, is I go into action, and that's just how I deal with. Other people will take months to be able to even have some sort of action after a diagnosis like that, saying it's donor eggs. And we've helped couples that have been told that they have an AMH of very low AMH, 0.09, and being told that donor eggs are their only option. They have multiple failed cycles of IVF and IUI, and then making some of these foundational changes I just discussed, finding that some people, this particular one I'm talking about, she had undiagnosed celiac disease, and she also had multiple gut infections, and ended up getting pregnant naturally within 4 months. So this stuff is taking a functional approach. It's key to kind of dig into the root cause. And if you're still cycling naturally, there's things we can do. So again, not being stuck on that fertility diagnosis and digging in further. And the food is key. The gut infections are key. And then looking at those stressors and really digging into the mental, emotional side of this that can be very impactful for people to have support. And again, if you're in a very dark place, a therapy may be an option for you. So definitely it's brave to reach out to someone. So if you're feeling that all these things, I've just given you like a fire hose of information, you're like, you're kidding me, I can't do any of this. And if you've had all these failed cycles, to me, I would start, the first place I would start is with mindfulness and really building your resilience again and seeing how you can kind of get to that coping place. But if you've just been diagnosed and maybe you've had one failed IVF or IUI, you may feel a little stronger to be able to make some of these changes. So just really listen to what feels right for you and really listen to your body. It's a quote from Dr. Mark Hyman, your body will whisper to you, and when you ignore the signals, it'll start shouting it in the form of disease. So really dig into that piece as to what your body is telling you. The food piece, you can start to really figure out how that impacts your body. And then stressors, like that was a huge one for me where I had the food thing all dialed in, but the stress, I was excited about a whole bunch of things, kept saying yes to everything. And then it would be like, why am I feeling burnt out here? What's going on? So you need to really say, even though you may want to say yes to things, to practice saying no. And that can be really impactful. So thanks for having me on the podcast here. I'm excited to share this information, sort of a functional approach to looking at fertility. And if you're doing keto, you're well on your way to figuring out the diet side of it. And it might just be tweaking this a little bit further, but definitely including your partner. This is key. This is not just women doing this by themselves. Like, it's always women that reach out to me, but it takes two to have a baby, and to really grab your partner with this and really. And it also, just a little thing on that, actually, you and your partner may handle infertility differently. So he may be seemingly, may not be able to, he may seem like he's not struggling or seem like he's not suffering, but just because he's not like you, setting up an Instagram profile or going on Facebook groups and chat groups, typically, stereotypically men aren't doing that. It doesn't mean he's not equally hurting. So for him to give voice to how he's dealing with this and really doing this together can be really helpful for a couple. So excited to be on the podcast. Thank you, Leanne, for having me. Definitely go check out my podcast. It's called Get Pregnant Naturally. I interview experts in the functional space as well as natural fertility, mind, body, and really talk about all this approach. And that's on iTunes and Spotify. So Get Pregnant Naturally. I also have a 3-day fertility diet challenge. You can go to Fertility Diet Freebie. So Fertility Diet Freebie, FREEBIE, and you can start cooking with your partner, taking out those inflammatory foods and just tweaking it a little further, especially if with keto, if you're doing dairy, dig into the dairy piece. And thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much to Sarah for taking over the show. That was a really good one. I hope that if you're struggling with fertility issues, you're feeling inspired and ready to move forward. Next up on the podcast, we have on Wednesday, December 11th, episode 213. I'm chatting about exercise and eating for normal keto people, aka not athletes, people that just go to the gym to do stuff for 30 minutes. And then Sunday, December 15th, episode 214, I'm chatting about bloating and constipation on keto, one of my favorite topics, not pooing. So I'm very excited to hang out with you then, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. Join us again in a couple of days to discover more Keto for Women secrets for your fat-fueled life. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor should it be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representations or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.